The first trip to Japan, I was still an undergrad, and there was a professor who invited students to go with him on this trip. We all flew over to Tokyo, and then from Tokyo down to Kyoto. That was a wonderful trip. I really just took off on my own. I was not a part. I was over there, and I was very grateful for it, but I was very grateful not to have to be affiliated with this professor. So I was on my own, and I explored every single bit of Kyoto that I could. And I learned so much about the gardens, and especially Ryoan-ji. I went there many times. In fact, one time I was going there, and, hitchhiking. Of course I did hitchhiking. Girls aren't supposed to do that, but I did. But this beautiful, brand spanking new garbage truck stopped, and I said, hey, could I get a ride over to Ryoan-ji? Sure. So I hitchhiked on a garbage truck, and they took me all the way over there. It was perfect. And I just spent days staying around there. That place was so hypnotizing because of the simplicity, because of the placement of the rocks, the meaning of the rocks, and then the beautiful temple that is adjacent to it. So I went there many times. I learned so much about the elemental qualities of space there at Ryoan-ji. Well, the moss garden is much more ephemeral. Ryoan-ji is more of an emblem, I think, of the culture. The moss garden is much more open-ended, and there's a lot of aspects to it that many people miss, which is the hike to the top, and then you're walking down, and then you see the whole patterning of the pine trees and how they're growing, and it really looks like a kimono. It looks like a very carefully painted Japanese kimono. So beautiful. The ability to see those things and to capture them in your imagination, and then you have them forever. I learned a lot of other things too, but I had a good time. I would take my motorcycle, and I had a motorcycle, yeah, because I had one in Beverly Glen when I was a student. So yeah, I rented a motorcycle. That was better than hitchhiking, and I went all over the place. I could see everything. I could stop and look. I felt like I was Japanese. Honestly, I really did. I became Japanese because I was just so embedded in it. I was so impressed with the culture and the dignity and scale. Going to another country is really the way to learn about space. There's a continuum of space and time, and one informs the other. By actually physically moving your brain and your body to another country, you're affected by that culture's ways and means. And that was the most transformative experience that I think I've had in my life, of being there because I was by myself. It was very difficult for me because I couldn't talk to people or speak the language. That trip to Japan, climbing Mount Fuji, was the most important thing of all. You have to start climbing up to the top of the mountain at midnight so that you can see the sunrise from the top. And it was surprising to me how many people there were there. There were people carrying bicycles up the top just so that they could ride their bike around the opening of the vent of the volcano. So there I was with 4 Japanese girls. A couple of them were pretty small. I mean, they were young, but I ended up having to carry one of them down. But coming down from Mount Fuji is easy. It's like skiing. It's ash, instead of snow. And then when we all got finally down to the bottom and they take this wonderful baths, then I taught them how to have a pillow fight. And they just loved it. They loved it. We had such a good time. It was one of the best adventures of that whole Japan part there. The influence that being in Japan and so eager to absorb every little bit of that culture through my pores and into my brain and aesthetics and everything, it was really wonderful. That was a big deal for me.